Hey, somebody needs to keep the spinning plates in the air. You are? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today, and with every show we do, is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by wisdomharbor.com, the streaming service whose goal it is to create the next greatest generation. For less than $3 a month, you'll have access to original content found only on wisdomharbor.com that builds effective and influential relationships between adults and young people. Dave Ramsey says it's also good for your business and teams. Utilizing video, audio, and the written word, content is delivered in small bites by Grammy winners, CEOs, comedians, master chefs, best-selling authors, and Hall of Fame speakers. There are even guitar lessons from an award-winning songwriter. Join wisdomharbor.com right now and become a part of the quest to create another greatest generation, starting with your family and your hometown. That's wisdomharbor.com. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on the Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. And our guest today, I think that you are going to enjoy for several reasons. He has an amazing history, he has an amazing present, and just a stellar future. We're going to find out what he has done. We're going to find out what he's doing and how we can help. But first, I guess the best way I can introduce our guest is to tell you that he graduated from high school in '76 and immediately joined the Marine Corps. And 3 years later, in '79, he had been deployed to the Iranian embassy in Tehran. And this was 22 days after he had been deployed there. The embassy was overrun, and Rocky was one of the 65 people that were held hostage in the Iranian Hostage Crisis that we all so just crazily remember. This just seems like it was yesterday. So much changed at that time. And we have him with us today. Please welcome Rocky Sickmann. Rocky, thank you for joining us.
No, Andy, thank you for having me on the air with you.
Now, you're in St. Louis today.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to talk about folds of honor in a little bit. And I guess I'm kind of amazed that a history you would have never chosen put you in a position to do some great work today. But take us through graduating high school and joining the Marines and what your thoughts were just at that time.
You know, it's one of those things, Andy. I grew up in a small town of Krakow, Missouri, population 50, and that's dogs and cats included. And so my father served in the Army, my brother served in the Army, and my parents taught me three things: love of family, love of faith, and love of country. And, you know, with them all serving, and my relatives, a majority of them also served, coming from that small town, I knew that there was more outside, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do going into school. And I had a chance to go to a small school for football, but academically, my head was not on right. But I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to be in MSG, Marine Security Guard duty. It was a very elite duty. I was deployed, as you mentioned. I went to graduation in San Diego. I then was deployed in Asia for a year, came back, went to Camp Geiger, North Carolina, then deployed to Europe, came back, and I'm seeing the world, this little kid. And my first duty post was in Iran, 1979. And here I was in a beautiful country. And again, the country of Iran, at one time, Andy, Lebanon and Iran used to be the most beautiful countries in the Middle East. Now they're rubble. But I thought I was going to adventure into something I had never done before, which I did. And obviously, November 4th, 1979, 66 Americans were stripped their freedom, their dignity and their pride, known as the Iran hostage crisis.
Now, when you got there, Rocky, um, it was 22 days before the embassy was overrun. When you arrived, what was the atmosphere? Were you like, oh, this is not what I thought? What was happening?
It was definitely very much back in time. The Shah had just been there and fled in January of 1979, Andy, and he was a very much a U.S. supporter. He was our friend. We provided a lot of equipment to him, aircraft, military hardware. But then all of a sudden, there were some issues where the Iranian people didn't like his strong westernized culture. And so in turn, they pushed him out of power and brought Ayatollah Khomeini in as a mullah. And so when I arrived, there were like high-rise, these big cranes that were building a lot of things. And so it was a beautiful country, old history, snow-capped mountains. And, I'm sitting there thinking, this is really going to be interesting. But we found out 2 weeks prior to November 4th, Andy, that the Shah was being allowed into the United States. Well, at this point in time, the Iranians, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the government wanted the Shah to come back to the country and stay on trial. So we had alerted the State Department, if you allow the Shah into the United States, one of three things is going to happen. And in fact, it's even documented that President Carter, in his meeting, it's documented that he said, if I allow the Shah in, what are you going to say when the Islamic Republic of Iran takes our people? Then what's going to happen? The sad thing about it, 2 weeks after he said that, that's exactly what happened. And so, the shit hit the fan, let's just say it like that, on November 4th, 1979. And Andy, if you've ever traveled overseas and been to an American embassy, they are secured by the host government, the outside perimeter. The inside perimeter of that embassy is really provided security by the Marines. And then that specific time, we had about 13 Marines, and we were not carrying weapons in around the 23-acre compound. We were in the chancery. I myself, if you've ever seen the movie Argo, Andy, if you've seen, my son got to be in that movie, and I got to speak to the cast of Argo. And I met Ben Affleck, but there's a character that's in there, Sergeant Sickmann. He's a much better looking guy than I. But anyway, that morning, and I remember the first part of the movie when it came out, and we went to the red carpet premiere. My right knee started to shake, and my wife is next to me, and she goes, "Are you all right?" And I said, "It's just that the sound sounded so real that morning of what the chants and the death to America." And all of a sudden, I'm walking into the motor pool gate. I'm 30 yards away from the front gate to the left. And all of a sudden, my walkie-talkie had recall. I look at the front gate, and they're coming over the wall. Andy, I will tell every American until I die, the morning of November 4th, 1979, there was no security from the host government at that front gate. It was just like they came over the walls to come get us. And I can tell you that I could run pretty fast back then. It was 44 years ago. And I got back to the chancery, and Billy Gallegos, another Marine, starting to secure the door. And he sees me being chased. He let me in. We secured the door. And for the next 4 hours, 7 Marines held that American embassy for 4 hours with snub-nosed 38s and sawed-off shotguns, waiting for the host government to come and remove these demonstrators. But as time went on, it became thousands of people that were all out there chanting death to America. And here you were, a 22-year-old kid, 10,000 miles away from home, and you're thinking, man, is this where I'm going to, bite the dust? And obviously, they broke through the basement window. The second thing I will never forget, and I will tell every American, is that morning on November 4th, 1979, they broke through the basement window, and it wasn't the Iranian men that came in first. They brought the Iranian women in black chadors, and they used them as shields because they knew the mindset of a military would not shoot unarmed innocent women. Billy Gallegos and myself were in the basement at that time, gas mask on, and they were slowly pushing these women forward towards us. And we were being screamed, don't fire, don't retaliate. Help is on the way. Tear gas was popped. They fled the building. We went up to the very top, and that's where we sat, secured, like I said, about 4 hours after the start of the event. And that's when, at this point in time, the people that they had taken, Andy, they brought them up to the other side of the door, and they were starting to put pistols to their head. And these were people that you just had breakfast with. And they're saying, hey, they got a gun to my head. If you don't open a door, they're going to shoot me. Well, one of our State Department higher staff, they were on the phone with President Carter. And that's when, he said, hey, give yourself up and we'll get this resolved with diplomacy. That was November 4th, 1979. And we sat for the next 444 days.
I remember that Ted Koppel,
Yep.
Nobody knew who he was. And then about day 2 or day 3, they started day 2, the Iranian Hostage Crisis. Day 3, the Iranian Hostage Crisis, and went all the way through 444. And at that point, they called it Nightline, and he just kept on with the show. But that started a nightly thing, a nightly news thing, which America had never had before. America had never had that kind of thing.
You're absolutely right. And you said it earlier that, it still blows me away because you're sitting there, Andy, for the first 30 days, you sat in the corner of a room. Or 1 week I sat tied in a bed to another State Department or Air Force guy. My wrists were tied to his ankles. My ankles were tied to his wrist. And we sat in a bed for a week. But normally you sat in the corner of a room and you're tied to a chair. Your arms are tied to the arms of the chair and your feet were tied to the feet of the chair. You sat there for 30 days. At night, they would tie you and put you on the floor. But during that time period, you would hear the city of Iran. You could, through the broken windows, you could hear the traffic start and it would peak during the daytime. And all of a sudden the traffic would go down and everybody would go to bed. And the next day it would peak and and there was day 2, day 5. And you're sitting there thinking, the Vietnam War just ended in 1975 and nobody cared about the Vietnam veterans. Who's going to care about 66 Americans 10,000 miles away from home? Because the world was going on without you. And you could hear the world go on as people were going to work each day. And here you sat in a chair. You thought you were forgotten. But little did I realize until I came home that you're right. I mean, people were tying yellow ribbons. I mean, Tony Orlando, he loved me because the tie yellow ribbon program was around the Vietnam veterans. And so when the Vietnam War ended, he went in mothballs. All of a sudden, we were taken hostage. He came out of mothballs and came that yellow ribbon. No, I'm serious. I had no idea that people were tying yellow ribbons around trees and everything. And, for me, this young kid from Krakow, Missouri.
So what were your captors saying to you? What were they telling you?
Yeah, they basically told us, if the Shah does not come home, you do not go home. And so it was as easy as that. And it was like in your interrogations, you would sit there and trust me, they weren't as polite as you and I are talking here. It was much more rough in language, I guess you could say. But yeah, it was just like, the United States is not going to deal with terrorism. You are terrorists. And to this day, Andy, I will tell everybody, they used to throw us up against the wall, slap us, pound on us. I was never beaten by a rubber hose, but, mock firing squads, Russian roulette. And they would tell us that we want the Shah to come back and stand trial for his atrocities. And the Soviet, how bad they were. Well, what I want to do is I want to go back and speak to the mullahs, and I want to speak to the Revolutionary Guard and ask the Iranian people, is your life really better now than what it was when the Shah was in? Because what the mullahs and the Revolutionary Guard are doing is probably as bad as what the Shah was doing. So, I mean, it's all the things that they criticized what he was doing. Here they are doing worse. And so, yeah, you had no idea, and you knew that the United States was not going to negotiate. I mean, had no idea. I had no idea, Andy, that I would spend my first Thanksgiving tied to a chair my first Christmas tied to a chair. The only thing that you could do was remember back to when growing up in that small town. And there were my parents, and there were 5 of us kids. And my father was a concrete mixer driver. My mother was a carpet store, but she was a hell of a cook. I mean, she could cook, and she had homemade bread, caramel rolls. I would eat these things. I would eat my pancakes in the corner of the room. I remember smelling her pancakes. I can remember watching the bubbles pop on the pancake on her skillet, and she would flip them over and put 4 pancakes on my plate, and I would eat them. I remember eating Thanksgiving dinner with the turkey and go through Christmas and open gifts. I mean, that was the only good thing that you had, Andy, going through.
You did this in your mind.
Yes. And thank goodness I had those wonderful memories, because those wonderful memories, they kept me alive. And trust me, my parents, like I said, they love of family, love of faith, and love of country. I never prayed so hard in my life, Andy, that I wanted the second chance. And little did I realize there was a rescue operation in 1980, April. And I mean, you were
Wait. Before we go to Desert One, I want to ask. You mentioned there were mock executions and Russian roulette.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, they wanted you to give information. They wanted you to open safes. They wanted you to make derogatory statements. And, they did find one individual broke through the whole ordeal. This guy sang like a bird, and he put people in solitary confinement. I was a Marine security guard. I was nothing of high status, although they were scared of the military people and everything. But yeah, they played with your mind. I mean, and the sad thing about it is, I don't know if I would have rather have been beaten by a hose than through the other stuff, because it's something that you never forget, Andy. It's like if you've ever gone through a car accident, the traumatic scene, you never forget the sounds, you never forget the smells, and you don't forget all these different things. And
So what is it like to be stood up and you think you're about to be shot?
At the age of 22. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is scary. It is concerning. I can tell you, my palms, I can remember against the wall, as my hands were up against the wall. They must have been sweating so profusely. My hands were coming down, and the guard would come back and push them back up on the wall. And I remember that one specific night of the mock firing squad, somebody had mentioned, if you hear the helicopters, you got to get to a weapon. And I mean, you're preparing, and I mean, you don't know what the heck is going to happen, but it was just a psychological thing that they were doing, playing with our mind. And that, to me, for 444 days, that's what it was. It was a psychological mind game every day, Andy. You didn't know if you were going to live or die for 444 days. Morning.
And they were putting a pistol in your hand and saying, shoot yourself.
Well, no, they were doing it themselves. Oh, yeah. They put the weapon to your head, and they told you to open the safe. And if you don't have the combination, they would pull the trigger. And, it was just, on and on and on.
And if they weren't messing with your mind, you were tied to a chair.
Or locked in a room for 400 days. We went outside 7 times out of 444 days. To go to the restroom, Andy, like where you're at in your area, you know where the restroom is. But if you're locked in that room, you can't leave the room because they got you locked in. And for you to go to the restroom, knock on the door, and then you had to put a piece of paper underneath the door. And if you knock too loud, they tell you have to wait. And you have to do it in a can if you couldn't go to the restroom. So you were locked in a room, tied to a chair for the first 30 days, locked in a room for 400 days, and went outside 7 times, 15 minutes each time.
Wow. So when did you hear about Desert One, the rescue that failed?
You knew something happened the day of April 25th, right? Because everything is a hostage. It's very routine. You had 3 plates, and the guard would come and take your food. and or take your plates. And so you had to clean your own plates. And so when you would go to the restroom blindfolded, you carry the plates. Everybody had the routine of cleaning dishes, which was a spoon and a plate, and you put the plates by the door. And that's the next morning when the guard would come and take your plates. He would take the plates, he would unlock the door, open the door, take the plates, close the door, lock the door, put the food on the plate, unlock the door, open the door, put the food on the floor, close the door, lock the door, and go to the next cell. And the cells consisted, we were locked in the American embassy, in the chancery. So that morning, it was a normal routine, but then all of a sudden, as the day went on, something happened. And I only know this now because I look back on, obviously, what was happening that day. People were running around because they had, by this time, Andy, found the charred helicopter, and they found the charred C-130, and they found the charred bodies that were in the desert. I mean, Andy, our government, these guys that had the guts to try. I want your listeners, your viewers, to think of this. Imagine that I'm just using a hypothetical, that the German embassy, we take the German embassy hostage in Iran, or that is in Washington, D.C. And the German government is saying, we're going to do a rescue operation to rescue our people from the German embassy in Washington, D.C. How do you even understand that that's even going to happen? I mean, how do you get in that close? Well, these guys had the guts to try, Andy. They made it in the middle of the country of Iran, the morning of April 25th. They landed in the desert, C-130s refueling helicopters by fuel bellies. And this was the first initiation of night vision goggles, Andy. I mean, this was the first time that they had used a multi-force group of people to try to come in to rescue the hostages. I had no idea that our government would ever attempt. I mean, 66 people died the first minute of the Vietnam War. And who cared about those people? You're sitting there thinking, nobody cared about them. Who cares about us? Little did I realize I was wrong, that these guys, 8 individuals, lost their life on that night or that morning of April 25th. And by that evening, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the government realized that the United States did attempt a rescue operation, and we were all in the chantry of the American embassy. By that evening, they had taken all of us and moved us. And so they came into our room. Whenever the door opened, very quickly you jumped because you didn't know if they were going to come in and start shooting or what. And they came running into our room, and they grabbed us and handcuffed me to Jerry. Jerry was the only American civilian. They handcuffed my left hand to his right hand. My right hand was handcuffed to Billy Gallegos' left hand. They then blindfold us, and then they take us down through the basement of the embassy up to the back, and then put us into a vehicle, handcuffed Jerry to the left, handcuffed Billy to the right. We're handcuffed, blindfolded, and they take a picture of us. I mean, and they put a blanket over top of us. And right when they put the blanket over top of us, Andy, we all three said, this isn't good. I mean, this is April 25th of 1980. You had been there since November, and things weren't getting good. Now they're getting worse, and you don't know what's going on. So they were moving. They moved. By that evening, all the American hostages were moved from the American embassy, the chancery, and they were scattered throughout the country of Iran. So they moved us, and then eventually they took us to this location. We didn't know where it was until the next day. We get there the afternoon of April 26th. There was no stopping at a rest area to go to the restroom. If you had to go to the restroom, Andy, you had to do it on yourself. I mean, being held hostage, you know what? I can take a shower every day. Sometimes I take a shower twice a day. You know why? Because I can. Back then, I told my daughter the other night, she's fighting an injury. I said, it took me, I think it was 3 months before I actually took a shower. I had to take a bird bath all that time. I mean, just to keep yourself clean. Well, we got ourselves cleaned up that day of April 26th. That evening, we were still at the location. At 1 o'clock the next morning, they put us back into the vehicle, and they drove us off, and they said, you've been to Isfahan. Now you're going to another location. We get to this next location, Andy, and we're there for, I don't know, a couple months and so, and all of a sudden we start hearing explosions in the distance. not only were we held hostage, but now we're in the middle of a war between Iran and Iraq. The explosions, which we thought were thunder, they were explosions of blown up buildings. And all of a sudden, one of our buildings next to us one night blew up. They came running into our room, handcuffed us. I was always the middle guy, put us into the vehicle and drove us off. And they said, "You've been to Shiraz. You've been to the nice places. Now you're going to the bad place." And so they brought us back to the embassy, and then they put us in the Wien prison.
Wow. And so when you were walked out or walked from your place, you were always blindfolded?
Oh yeah, just to go to the restroom. When you knew the restroom was right down the hall to the right, they blindfolded you. You never left that room for 400 days unless you were blindfolded.
So what happened to, I mean, I remember the release. What happened with you? How were you guys aware that you were being moved for the last time and in transportation back to America?
Yeah, and let me go back. You had asked me, did you really know anything about the rescue operation? You remember I told you we were at a second location, and one of our guards, we called all of our guards different names because all their names were Ali, and so we just said, "Your name's Mr. Fix-It, your name's Santa Claus, your name's Ali the cook." And so Santa Claus, one of our guards, came in one day, and he had a magazine. So again, he comes walking in, and we had not seen any type of political literature. The only thing we got to read, were sports news. And so he comes walking into the room, and he opens up a New York Times magazine, and all three of us are on the other side. He opens it up and said, "This is what your country is trying to do to you." And then he closes it. I mean, it wasn't even 10 seconds he had it open. And all three of us are looking at it, and he closes and walks out of the room. And so we all sit down and say, "Okay, what did you see?" "I saw this. What did you see?" And so we knew at this point in time, this is right after April 25th, when we had been moved, that there had been a possible rescue operation. And it showed people that we didn't really know, but then it showed some of the hostages. So, but we really didn't know what actually happened until after being released, Andy. So it was now, they brought us back, they put us in a Wien prison. They took us out right before Christmas of 1980. So I spent my second Thanksgiving. And in fact, that was about the time that we had read from a St. Louis Sporting News magazine, Andy. In our cell, we read this sporting news that said, "Due to the death of the Shah of Iran." So the Sporting News put this one sentence because they had known that we were getting to read sports material. And so they put this one sentence, "Due to the death of the Shah of Iran." But the reason why we were held hostage, supposedly, was because of the Shah. Well, now the Shah's dead. So we're in prison. We go to the steel door. We pound on the door. The guard comes, "Gee, what do you want?" "The Shah, he's dead. It says it right here." "No, we do not believe he is dead." "What are you talking about? It says it right here." We could not see the body. So supposedly the Iranians could not see the Shah's body. So in turn, they believed that he was not dead, and they were just making this false story. So we spent our second Thanksgiving and second Christmas, and it was getting to the point, Andy, that you just did not see any light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, it was getting worse, that when they would take you to the restroom blindfolded, and they would, they'd get a lot of excitement and laughter from us falling over different things. And like I said, on the day of November 4th, we were removed our dignity, our pride, and everything. And these guys were just humiliating us. And so you get back to the door, and they'd start to close the door. You'd rip the blindfold open, throw the door open, you'd start walking out into the hallway where you were not allowed to be. And the reason why is the guards that took us to the restroom never carried weapons. The guys that had the weapons were out in the hallway, and they didn't want us to see them. So we walked out into the hallway, and they would come with their weapon, and you would put the weapon in your mouth and just say, "You know what? Pull the trigger. Pull the trigger." I mean, you take the barrel, and you didn't want to live anymore. Andy, you had been there for now over 300 days and just not able to really see any end of the light. And so they would push us back in, and that's why they had to keep us locked in a room. And it was January 20th, 1981. They had taken our shoes from us. We had plastic-toed shoes, and the Soldiers Memorial here in St. Louis has got a lot of my old paraphernalia that I had came home on with. They don't have my pair of pants I'd worn for over 200 days. My left cheek completely hanging out of it. Not a pretty picture. But that night of January 20th, they came into our room and they blindfolded us. They didn't handcuff us, didn't tie us. And we walk out of the room, and instead of going right the way we came in, the guard took us to the left. I was the first one. Jerry had his arm on my shoulder, and Billy had his arm on his shoulder. And all of a sudden, we go down 10 yards. He stops me, and he turns me, and he opens up a door, and you felt this cold, fresh air. And you walk out, and I walk into something I hadn't felt for 2 years, snow. It was snowing out, and the snow was hitting me on the face through my blindfold. And I can remember my feet, crunching through the snow. I mean, how it was so cold, but it felt so good. I mean, these simple things that you had lacked. And they put us onto a vehicle, and all of a sudden turned us around and set us down. And all of a sudden the vehicle starts up, and it scrapes the right side of the vehicle. It jumps the curb, and we turn right, and we drive for, 30 minutes or so. And all of a sudden made a right-hand turn, and you heard something that you had prayed for. I mean, you would cry for, you would hope for an opportunity, an airplane. And all of a sudden, the vehicle that we were in stops right behind the plane, and the force of the jet is pushing against this airplane. And all of a sudden, I didn't have glasses then, I didn't have hearing aids then, but the guard says, unblindfold. So you start to unblindfold, and you're doing it very slow, because in the past, if you try to unblindfold, they pound on you if you try to sneak. And so here you were very slowly taking your blindfold off, and you're looking at people that maybe I had dinner or breakfast with you on November 4th. I don't see you again until January 20th, 1981. We were all separated. And you're looking at the other person, and you look bad, you smell bad, and you're in shock. You don't know what's going on. And all of a sudden they start taking us one by one, and they're chanting death to America, and they're spitting on us. And we board the back of this airplane, which the individual wasn't an American. We didn't know who he was until we got on top of the airplane, that they were Algerian. And we had no idea that the United States, and Andy, I don't know if you know, but the reason why I'm here is the United States negotiated an $8.3 billion, that's with a B, billion, in gold to release the Iran hostages. That airplane arrived on January 17th, when the United States released $8.3 billion in gold that day on January 17th. And the Islamic Republic of Iran, they told us in all of our interrogations, it is not you, the American people, we hate. It's your government, but we will use you to humiliate your government. And so what they were doing, it's January 20th, and you weren't really thinking about what was happening back home. And back home was the inauguration. Here you were thinking, are we actually going to go home? And you get onto this airplane, Andy, and all of a sudden they start closing the back of the tail of the airplane, and you're freed, but you're not freed. I mean, we're not popping champagne. We're not doing it because you're still on the tarmac on this airplane in Iran, and they're chanting death to America. That just doesn't go when they're chanting death to America and you're boarding an airplane. And all of a sudden they close the door, and you're looking around saying, whoa, where's Gene? Where's Judy? Where's Debbie? Where's everybody else at? And they said, no, you're the last. I said, what are you talking about? We're not all here. And they said, no, the others were let go a year earlier. We had no idea, Andy, that other people had been let go a year earlier, and that we had remained for 444 days. You could not, and nor did you want to leave anybody, excuse my mouth, in that shithole. I mean, it was not a good place, and you couldn't. And so sad it had to have been for my colleagues that were let go to know that they were boarding airplanes and leaving their friends behind. I mean, I know many of them had issues that they were allowed to leave, and we still remain. But the night of January 20th, 1981, we were assured that everybody was on board. Everybody was accounted for. The pilot comes on broken English and says, we must leave very quickly. He taxis up, turns left. He goes up a little bit further, turns left again, taxis up. He's got the foot on the brake and he starts accelerating and the plane is shaking, Andy. And all of a sudden it comes back down to an idle. And it's like, again, the mind games that they played. I mean, they turned the runway lights off because back home, the inauguration was still going in. They waited 20 minutes until President Carter was out of office just to stab President Carter. They have stabbed every United States president in the back since 1979. And the morning of November 4th, 1979, Billy Gallegos and I had our fingers on the sawed-off shotguns. And he and I, we talk about this. You kind of regret not ever pulling the trigger because Iran has never been held accountable for what they did then to what they have done now. I mean, after we were let go, what did they do to President Reagan's watch? They killed 240 Marines in Beirut. I mean, the suicide bomber. And the IEDs that have killed our guys in Afghanistan and Iraq and on and on and on. So just very sad that night, though, obviously the lights came on. The pilot said, we must leave. And the plane took off and nobody was clapping. It wasn't until we got into Turkish airspace that the pilot came on and said that we were in Turkish airspace and 2 fighters were escorting us. Did we realize that we had then been freed? And I finally get home and I have met this young girl, which is now my wonderful wife. She had waited for me for 444 days, Andy. And I get on the horn and she tells me about how 8 people had lost their life coming over to try to regain my freedom. I mean, Andy, how do you can't forget that. I mean, these individuals, they sacrificed their life for my life. And it's like every morning I get up, I earn each day in memory of those 8 individuals. And that's why Folds of Honor is such a therapeutic piece for me, providing scholarships to children and spouses of our disabled, our fallen military and now first responders. And it's a therapeutic piece for me to give back, where obviously I had 3 colleagues that tried to commit suicide over there. They succeeded when they came home here in the States, after that. Because, I mean, trust me, being held hostage was nothing I ever expected that I would have to go through. In training, obviously back then, it's interesting. I was just at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty the other day. I was there last Friday during the event, and little did I realize that the Delta Force guys, they were at Fort Bragg, and they have built a replica of the embassy to practice the rehearsal of trying to rescue us. I mean, and all the things that have happened since. But that rescue attempt is really why we have SOCOM and CENTCOM to this day, the special operation.
There is a gentleman that I know. They all call him Coach. And I worked for 8 years with special operations and got to be friends with Coach. And if you see the pictures of Desert One when they had their picture outside the big plane before the mission, you see the guy sitting on the motorcycle.
Yeah,
that's Coach.
Oh,
and they decommissioned him and made him a civilian and dropped him with a parachute and that motorcycle into Iran to lay out the landing lights, and then picked him back up and recommissioned him so that he could go on the mission. And but if you see that picture, next time you see that picture, that's Coach, and Coach is involved in a lot of special warrior projects for the children of special operations.
Was that John Carney by chance, Andy?
Yeah, John Carney.
Yeah, I mean, I met Colonel Carney. I mean, I'm working for Budweiser, right? I come home and my girlfriend, now my wonderful wife, and again, thank goodness I'm still married to Joan. She keeps me on track. Without her, I'd be in a ditch. But she said, Rocky, when I came home, either me or the military, but I can't do this. You have to choose. So I chose wisely. I chose her. I got on board with Anheuser-Busch because Anheuser-Busch back in 1982, they've been for a century, they've been supporting the military and still are. And so here I am working for Anheuser-Busch, and I have to go down to Dallas, Texas, because they had a NASCAR. They had a camouflage and a red, white, and blue car. And they had created, and they go, yeah, you're going to go down there and we're going to donate all the dollars to special operations. I said, whoa, how did you get special operations? And they go, well, why do you ask? I said, well, these guys are very special to me. They're the ones that came over to try to rescue me. And they said, well, it's just what Mr. Bush wanted to do. And I said, okay, I'd be honored to go down there. So I'm sitting there. Dale Earnhardt is autographing all these cars. And all of a sudden, who comes behind me? But this gentleman taps me on the shoulder and he goes, are you Rocky Sickmann? I said, yes, sir, I am. He goes, are you one of the hostages? I said, yes, sir, I was. He goes, my name's Colonel Carney. I said, Colonel Carney, your name sounds so familiar. And he just described what you just told me. He was the guy that put the light probes on, and it put, and so yeah, and
he was in the desert a week before the attempt by himself riding that motorcycle around.
And that motorcycle wasn't a military issue. They had to go out down to the Yamaha dealers to buy all this because back then they didn't have that equipment. And so they had to go out and buy it. So those guys, Andy, I still have the opportunity to meet many of them that were on the rescue operation. And Colonel Carney and we sat there, I don't know, we drank quite a few Budweisers that night. He had never met a hostage. I had never met one of the guys on the rescue operation, but I mean, it was just, again, I gave that analogy of thinking that the Germans are going to rescue their folks out of the embassy in Washington, D.C. How do you think that you could get into there? But these guys had it all planned out and ready to come in. And
Coach Carney works with Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which does the scholarships for fallen Special Operations Warriors kids. And so tell us about Folds of Honor.
And so here I am working for Anheuser-Busch. I was there for 34 years, and it's 2007. I'm the director of military sales, Andy. I'm selling beer to the military worldwide, even to the American embassies, because for 444 days, I've so much wished I had a Budweiser, but I never had it. And so here I am, director of military sales, and the security calls and says, hey, there's this guy down in the lobby here in St. Louis, and he wants to talk to somebody about a military program. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Rooney, I don't know if you ever heard about his story, how he came home. He's an F-16 fighter pilot. He flew into Chicago and went to Grand Rapids, and they were getting off, and the pilot comes over and asked that everybody please remain on board. They were bringing home the remains of a young soldier. And as he looks out, he sees this draped casket with an American flag and a small little boy on a tarmac and this weeping mother on a tarmac. And the casket comes off, and a pilot had asked everybody to remain on board. 20 minutes go by, and the pilot says, thank you. Lieutenant Colonel gets up and looks around, realizing that 3/4 of the people left the plane, nowhere to go than the warm blanket that this individual just died defending and providing, the poor little boy would never again be able to go fishing with his father, be at his wedding, be at his graduation, and that he realized that the American people had lost what freedom is all about. It's not free, that this man just lost his life. So he came home, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and he and his wife created Folds of Honor over his garage. And one of the companies he wanted to get was Anheuser-Busch, because he had known and heard that they had supported military. And I meet him. He tells me his story. I tell him my story. And so now 13 years now that we have been working with, Budweiser, $22 million that they have provided to Folds of Honor. Folds of Honor has provided over 44,000 scholarships to our recipients. That's $200 million. 41% of our recipients, Andy, are minority. Every dollar that comes in, 91 cents goes into that scholarship. And so very honored. When I retired from Anheuser-Busch in 2016, Lieutenant Colonel Rooney asked me, hey, would you come work for me? So I have been working with him, but I'm the liaison between Anheuser-Busch and Folds of Honor. And like I said, 13 years, and 13 is a very special number. As you know, that's why there's 13 folds to a flag. And so here we've been celebrating $22 million that Anheuser-Busch with their brands and Anheuser-Busch wholesalers like Willie Ludwig from Ludwig Distributing in Stuttgart, Arkansas.
Willie and Marge. Yeah, Willie and Marge. Love them to death.
Yes. So, and I'm so honored, but like I said, it's a therapeutic piece also for me because I'm helping those that did so much for me that morning of April 25th, and that they're 1% of our population serving the war on terrorism to this day. I mean, as you know, there's 1 million men and women that have died or been disabled by war, 2 million dependents that have been affected by this war, and the cost of tuition is $9 billion for those individuals. And then you go to first responders. Everybody remembers what happened on 9/11, Andy. Everybody was running away. Who was running in but our first responders? There's 2 million. There's 800,000 policemen. There's 1 million firefighters, and there's 200,000 EMT. And every year, 240 911 calls are sent out. And I don't know about you, but we've had my father-in-law, God love him, he passed away recently at our house. But for that year, we used to have to call 911. And 2 o'clock in the morning, there'd be 4 people at the door. I mean, not one person, 4 people. Hey, how can I help? And so that's why, first responders was a big addition to Folds of Honor, in addition to the military, because these, like you said, and you have 2 boys. And I think back to my poor parents, Andy. Imagine how would you be able to survive knowing that one of your sons were held hostage? I mean, how do you go to work every day and have your mind thinking of work when you know that your loved one is in this foreign country and they're parading him around blindfolded with guns to his head? I mean, for 444 days. My mother, God love her, she kept her Christmas tree up until I came home. I mean, it died, and my poor father had to go out and cut down, I think, 2 different trees because they had real trees. And so when the tree would die, they'd go out and get another one, and she kept it up. She was a very strong Catholic woman, and she knew I was going to come home.
Wow. Buddy, thank you, first of all, for your service to our country, for your love and loyalty to our country, for your faith example, your love for your parents and your friends, that example that you set for us. And I do this podcast once a week, and my boys are 23 and 21, right? The age that you were when you were there. And I don't even say anything to them about every episode, much less having any idea whether they watch every episode. I know they watch some because they'll mention to me, but this is one I'm going to make sure that they watch. And I appreciate you so much. And so we will have the ways people can connect with Folds of Honor on the show notes. When this airs, we will tag you on it so that you can send it out to everybody. And I'm going to make sure I get you a Books for Veterans t-shirt. We give books to the Veterans Administration, and our viewers help with that. And I want to get you that, but I would love to keep up with you, Rocky. I appreciate Willie and Marge so much connecting us, and I'm a great admirer and feel very fortunate to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. And again, Willie, such an incredible guy, and what Anheuser-Busch wholesalers have done. And my story, like I told you, Folds of Honor, we provided 44,000 scholarships. Each one of those scholarships, Andy, have a story. And the American people, we just cannot forget that freedom is not free. And men and women and these families have to, why education? That's why we always say honor their sacrifice, educate their legacy. You're not going to bring that lost loved one home, but you're going to be able to educate that person to take that and carry on. And many of them came out incredible, and they tell the story of how education helped them. But people donating, foldsofhonor.org, a great way to go, and you can donate $13. And why 13? 13 folds to a flag. And those 8 individuals, those families, all received that folded flag. And it's something that I'll never forget.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for educating everybody about Folds of Honor.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing what tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Microfilm for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by the Earwax Foundation for Entrepreneurs. Have you run out of ideas on how to make a bit of extra cash? The Earwax Foundation for Entrepreneurs has answers for you. The first step is to purchase the Harvester, a small device that fits snugly over one ear at a time, and with a gentle suction over an hour's period, harvests your newly produced earwax. Best of all, the process is not incredibly painful. After the harvest is complete on one ear, shift the harvester to the other side and repeat the process. Next, set up a regular harvest schedule for the ears of friends and family. You'll find earwax easy to work with and quite versatile, from birthday candles to the big candles for the middle of your dining room tables. Earwax makes perfect yellow candles for sale or home use. Stationary seals as a barrier on the top of jams and jellies are also popular options, as well as for protection of your vehicle after a wash. Order your harvester now, and you'll receive a triangle-shaped pet harvester for the ears of your dogs and cats as well. That's the Earwax Foundation for Entrepreneurs. Earwax not for human consumption.